यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अस्तोत्र सत अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अस्तोत्र सत श्री श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य बीबीटी फाउंडर आचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 32. Today we have text 20. Dakshinena patharyamanaha pitrilokam vrajanti te प्रजाम अनु प्रजायन्ते स्मशानन्ता क्रिया कृताः दक्षिणेन पथार्यम्नाः पितृलोकं व्रजन्ति ते प्रजाम अनु प्रजायन्ते स्मशानान्त क्रियाकृताः दक्षिणेन पथार्यम्नाः पितृलोकं व्रजन्ति ते प्रजाम अनु प्रजायन्ते स्मशानान्त क्रियाकृताः दक्षिणेन पथार्यम्नाः पितृलोकं व्रजन्ति ते प्रजाम अनु प्रजायन्ते स्मशानान्त क्रियाकृताः। Please chant. दक्षिणेन पथार्यां न प्रजाम् अनुप्रजायन्ते दक्षिणेन पितृलोकं गच्छन्ति प्रजामनुप्रजायन्ते दक्षिणेन पथार्यां न पितृलोकं व्रजन्ते प्रजामनुप्रजायन्ते शानान्ता क्रिया दक्षिणेन माताजी दक्षिणेन पथार्यं न पितृलोकं व्रजन्ति ते प्रजायन्ते शमशानान्ता क्रिया कृता शमशानान्ता क्रिया कृता दक्षिणेन southern patha by the path Aryamnaha of the sun Pitrilokam to Pitriloka Vrajanti go they Prajam their families Anu along with Prajayante they take birth Samshana the crematorium Anta to the end Kriya fruitive activities Krita performing. Translation. Such materialistic persons are allowed to go to the planet called Pitriloka by the southern course of the sun, but they again come back to this planet and take birth in their own families, beginning again the same fruitive activities from birth to the end of life. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, verse 21, it is stated that such persons are elevated to the higher planetary systems. As soon as their lifetime of fruitive activity are finished, they return to this planet, and thus they go up and come down. those who are elevated to the higher planets again come back into the same family for which they had too much attachment. They are born and the fruitive activities continue again until the end of life. There are different prescribed rituals from birth until the end of life, and they are very much attached to such activities. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhayasya Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. This verse is actually a continuation from the previous verse, where it's talking about people engaged in fruitive activities and the results of such activities. Actually, it's a continuation from few previous verses, because this whole chapter is talking about entanglement in fruitive activities. So we can see this analogy of silkworm trapped in its own cocoon. And no one puts silkworm in such a condition, but by its own saliva it creates this cocoon, and it gets trapped in this cocoon that it creates itself. So a person engaged in fruitive activities is in such a condition, because no one is forcing such person in those conditions, but because of their nature they are acting in certain way, and those activities they put them in those conditions. And then what happens? They think someone else is doing this and they even blame other people for those things. But a person who has understanding of these different natures, they can see that it's by this own person's doings that they are put in such conditions. So Kapila Muni, he is describing the difficult conditions one is placed in due to one's actions, karma. And one can also get out of such condition just by changing one's actions, by changing one's karmic activities. So karma is very popular word. Many people talk about karma. Driving to one of the places, I even saw there is a car, and the make of the car is called Karma. It's interesting. People use these words, but how much, even as devotees, how much do we actually understand the impact of those words? But when we hear things like this, it actually makes us reflect on these words. So this is actually from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, and there it's Srila Prabhupada, he is describing this, that living entity entangled in different types of fruitive activity is like a silkworm trapped in a cocoon. Getting free is very difficult unless he is helped by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is actually Sukdev Goswami speaking this verse, and this is Srila Prabhupada's reflection on this verse in the purport So it's described karma kanda, jnana kanda, kevala, vishera bhanda. It's like a visha is the poison. So karma kand and jnana kand, all these activities based on fruity, the karma and jnana, they are like a pot of poison. We are drinking this poison without knowing it is poison. Just like this analogy of medicine is used. When someone is sick, you give them the medicine. If they know its effect or they don't know, it's gonna act. So same way, if the child takes medicine or any person who takes the medicine, they can be cured of their sickness. Same way, without knowing, we are engaging in these activities, karmic activities, based on our desires for fruitive results, or even activities based on jnana, and even they become entangling. And so we are entangling ourselves again and again by performing such actions. But those who take shelter of the proper procedures, like they call, those who follow the protocols, they can get out of such things. So the protocols are mentioned in the Vedas, and Vedas are given by the Supreme Lord. And we hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is especially written for to help the conditioned souls of Kali Yuga. Because Vyasadeva, seeing the future, he put Srimad Bhagavatam, because people don't live so long these days to study all the Vedas in detail. And even if they study at max, they will become impersonalists, because not many people can understand the Vedas without proper guidance. And we see that so many people, they say, oh, I've studied the Vedas, but did you understand the goal of the Vedas? What's the goal? Even yesterday I was speaking with one person from India, and he was saying that he's a sound engineer. So he was saying Krishna is actually a scientist. Krishna is a scientist. I was like, yes, he's giving the spiritual science. But he was like, no, he created the science. He created a science how to create mass destruction weapons. I was like, okay, that is interesting. And so he was saying, I am using this knowledge, and I'm doing similar things. I'm using the purpose to use this knowledge is to create facility for development. And so I was asking, so what are you developing? And he said he's a sound engineer, so he's developing, he said they are trying to develop a couch where a person who cannot hear, they can sit on this couch and they will get some understanding of sound. So that's what they are developing. And so this is his understanding after studying the Vedas. But here we see the understanding that's given by Vyasadeva, that's given by great devotees of the Lord. What it does, it helps us get out of this cycle of entanglement, of repeated birth and death. And the process given is, Kapila Muni already described in few chapters before, glories of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. Before we talk about that, we can see even these days people do not understand, even if you engage in karmic activities for gaining some fruitive results, even to achieve those results, there are certain procedures. You have to follow certain kind of disciplines to actually achieve those results. So people in earlier ages, they understood these things. But people these days, they do not understand that we have to follow certain kind of disciplines to achieve the results. They think you can just keep working, work harder, and you can achieve the results. But that's not how things work. Because people in general, you see, like to make more money, they think you have to work harder, you have to work longer hours, you have to work overtime, and that's how you make more money. But people who understand these Vedic standards, they know how these things come. And like how I think it was Brigupati Prabhu in few classes ago, he was explaining that some devotee was explaining to him how in India people, they don't open the shops till like 10 or 11 o'clock, and you would wonder what do they do before 10 or 11. So the morning time they are doing their different ritualistic activities or performing their worship to whoever they worship. But here we see, like I see sometimes we come for Mangalarti and some person is driving fast going to some job early in the morning, or maybe finished partying later at night, however we want to put it. So those understanding is not there, and therefore we are getting entangled in so many difficult situations as a result of that. So a major cause of death, one of the major causes of death these days is accidents. People are driving and there are so many signs, don't drive if you are drunk, something like that. But still people keep driving. And then there are DUIs, driving under influence. So once you get a DUI, you cannot drive any longer. I think there are some rules like that. So one time I met a student actually who was sharing this, that they are going through so much difficulty and they cannot drive anymore. So I asked, why can't you drive anymore? And this student told me that they were drunk when they were driving and the cops stopped them, and they got some fine they have to pay. It's a big fine and they cannot drive any longer, some situation like that. So this person already knows that if they drive when they are drunk, they can be stopped, and if they get stopped they can get a ticket and they have to pay some fine, and they can even lose their driver's license. So but in general life, people in general, they don't think there are certain standards we have to follow to live a healthy life, to live a happy, prosperous life. They think you can just decide everything on their own, and that's called freedom. But as a result of following these freedom laws, these are also some laws we make ourselves, and we find ourselves entangled in these kind of situations where this person lost their driver's license. Now they cannot go to work, they cannot go to school, and if they rent get a Uber or something, it costs them so much more. So they are putting them in this difficult situation by their own actions. So in same way, people in general, they are putting themselves in these conditions and they are coming back again and again. Many people, they even think there is only one life. I think it's a popular word among society, YOLO. You live only once. So it means, what does it mean? If you live only once, what would you do? If you know you are going to live only one time, what will you do? Max it out. Enjoy as much as you can, because this is the only opportunity. So people engage in enjoying activities, party, unlimited party. And as a result, the following days, it takes them few days to get out of those party mode. because it has certain effects once you engage in those parties. So that's the situation, current situation. And then once they get out of this mode, then they realize, oh, I ended up paying so much for my party. Now I have to pay my credit card off. So they spent so much in drunk situation. Now the credit card is calling, hey, you guys owe us money for this and that. And so there is so many consequences of that. But we keep doing it again and again, because once it's been few days, again the person is thinking, man, all my friends are going to this party and I have to join them because they are my friends. So like that, due to under the name of friendship or under the name of family, society, or even nation, we participate in certain activities and we keep doing these. As a result, we are creating this strong entangling situation for us, like this silkworm. So, and then many people, let's say, they may start reflecting after some time. After you've been doing it repeatedly, you think, okay, maybe this is not working out, so I have to figure out, because maybe you get sick, really sick, and it made you reflect. Like some people, they say they started changing their food habits because they got very sick, or they realize there is so much violence. I don't want to be violent to anyone or anything in that matter, and they decide to become a vegan or a vegetarian. So for whatever reason, it made them reflect and they started changing. So the same way, these people who are engaging in such activities, such kind of YOLO lifestyle, then it forces them to think that maybe there is some other way. Then what happens? They start to look for some spirituality, some spiritual solutions. So many people follow Buddha. Now the philosophy of Buddhism is what? That you become, because this body, it gives us pain. This is made from material elements. So if you disintegrate these elements, then you attain nirvana. So people develop this thinking. They can become free from desires, they can become free from this body, and that is nirvana. They can get into the void. But even that doesn't solve the problem. And then there is Shankara philosophy. So Shankara, the followers of Shankara, they do say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the spirit soul, okay? But then even they think that this body is a problem. So no genuine philosopher, they actually recommend that you just use this body to enjoy life. Neither Buddha recommended that, neither Shankara recommended that. No genuine philosopher recommends. But modern age philosophers, this is what they recommend. YOLO. You live only once and max it out. Don't miss any opportunity that comes your way. So, but the Srila Prabhupada, I was reading some purports, and he was saying even Shankara followers, they do accept the teachings of the Vedas, but their understanding is incorrect also, because they are just thinking that this body is illusion and you have to get out of this body. And he was explaining many times in their meditation, they get to the point where they think they are God. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining that yes, we are God in one sense, that we are like the same in quality with the God, but not in quantity. So he is saying that their philosophy is also incomplete, but then we have the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya also promoted this philosophy and the Bhakti philosophy. And there he is recommending how by engaging in Bhakti Yoga one can get out of such an entanglement. After a couple of verses, Kapila Muni, he will recommend this to Devahuti, that only by engaging in devotional service to the Supreme Lord can one get out of this entanglement. Otherwise, we will be creating a cocoon like the silkworm and being trapped in it. And then we can go unlimitedly, thinking how it happened, or we can blame others or whatever. But we won't be able to find the solution on our own. And that's what this conversation of Kapila Muni and Mother Devahuti, because she's already realized actually, she's wife of Kardama Muni, and we can see her son is Lord Kapila, but she's asking these questions for benefit of people like us who are like the silkworm, engaged in fruitive activities. Of course, devotees, they are very fortunate, they come in contact with these teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, with Srila Prabhupada, and we develop understanding of Bhakti Yoga, as a result of which we can understand this influence of the Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Bhanda. So we can understand it's poisonous, and we don't want to be dealing with the poison. We want to deal with the ambrosial nectar. What's the ambrosial nectar? Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham Shavanamangalam Srimadattatam Bhuvi Granantiye Bhurida Janam. So Tava Kathamritam, the devotees engage in hearing the Kathamrita, the nectar of the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna. And that's how, engaged in such activities, they become free from such influences. The great example of Parikshit Maharaj, even at the verge of his death, he knows he is going to die in 1 week, but he is not afraid, he is fearless. He is actually saying, let this snake bird come and bite me. But he is saying, I want to hear the glories of Lord Krishna. If you go to the hospitals, I don't know how many people will say this, like you go to these emergency wards where there are terminal illness patients, and you ask them, how many of them? Not many people would be like, oh yes, I want to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, or I want to hear glories of Lord Krishna. No, they are actually very scared, and many times if you see, they are actually shouting because they are seeing these Yamadutas coming to take them, and they are actually in great fear. That's their situation. But still because they have no understanding, being absorbed in ignorance, they think, oh, I have so many things to do still. So they are also lamenting their situation. They couldn't complete all these tasks. They want to come back. They still want to come back and finish these tasks. So they don't realize these desires, they're going to bring them back to the same situation. But I don't know, like, how many of you, even as practicing devotees, when you look in the mirror, do you actually think you want to come back and be the same person in next life? So there is one pastime where Krishna, he actually is looking on the floor, and he sees his reflection, and he actually marvels. He's saying, who is this beautiful person? I want to embrace this person. He's so beautiful. Krishna looking at his own reflection on the floor. That's how beautiful Krishna is. But a living entity is not attracted. They are attracted to the illusory beauty of this world. But when once one's eyes are cleansed, then they can see this beauty of Krishna and they can get attracted to devotional service. So one has to develop this vision, but this vision, it is given only by pure devotees. Like in these times, Srila Prabhupada, he shared this bhakti wisdom with so many people all over the world. And as a result, people like us, we got this opportunity to engage in devotional service. So we can think about these points and reflect on this point of the cocoon. It's a beautiful analogy. There are so many analogies like this in Srimad Bhagavatam, especially when we read Krishna book. Srila Prabhupada gives so many analogies. And we can just meditate on these analogies. It makes it so easy to understand these things. These were some of the points that I could take from this verse. It has a small purport, but maybe some of you want to share some reflections on these ideas. We have been hearing classes. Yes, Rabindranath Prabhu. We have a couple of minutes.
Yeah, you mentioned how some people think that we just only have one life, and so might as well just enjoy as much as you can, because after this life it's all zero. But can somebody also think that if it's going to be zero at this life, then why endeavor so hard for sense gratification? It's all going to be your own nothing after that.
Well, that's why you are here, because you didn't think like this. Yeah, I mean, everyone is different, but generally it depends. Like I was explaining, there are different philosophers. It depends which philosopher people want to follow. So some people are following these philosophers and they think, that's how you want to live a happy life. But then there are like people who are following the philosophy of Buddha, and they are engaging in strict discipline and they want to attain nirvana. Their goal is that. And then there are people who want to follow Shankara. So they think Aham Brahmasmi, and they follow very strict discipline. Actually, many of us, we cannot follow such disciplines. Like in Bhakti school, there are many relaxations. But in this Shankara school, there is not, those sannyasis, they are very, very strict. And we cannot do those kind of tapasya that they do. But engaging in Bhakti yoga is so much more practical and easy to do. And so there are people who follow Bhakti yoga and they engage in this way also.
Okay, thank you.
Brigupati Prabhu.
Thank you, bro. I really enjoyed your class. You're the only Indian-bodied devotee who I can understand in person. I love the way you speak very slowly and clearly, and your delivery is really, at least for me, it's really good. It's very user-friendly. I have a small question. You mentioned about the Buddhists a couple times in the class, and in the first earlier part you mentioned how their philosophy was, well, the cause of all the suffering is the body, so just get rid of the body, and then what's the difference between the Buddhist nirvana, as I understood you were describing it, and the atheist conception of death? Because the atheists believe when you die, that's the end. So it sounded like the Buddhist conception of nirvana is something pretty similar.
It is pretty similar, and in the Vedas actually they also think like Buddha is mad because he is rejecting the Vedas. So it's similar, but it's different in the sense, at least their goal is to attain nirvana. And the atheist, and they have some kind of conception of they think like a liberated sage, like Buddha. They actually don't think Buddha is God. They think Buddha is like, you can become Buddha, you can attain nirvana. So they don't really have conception of God in that sense. In that sense, it's atheist philosophy actually. But it's beneficial for people still, because like if they are following non-violence, ahimsa, they are not killing animals. In that sense, it's useful, beneficial for them. So gradually, like many Buddhists, they can take to bhakti. So in that sense, there is a benefit for them. They can progress from there. But atheists, they don't want to accept anything to do with any God or any like a conception of attaining nirvana or anything.
But Buddhists don't have the idea of consciousness that survives the body, right? So what's experiencing? Like, how is nirvana different just than death?
Is from what I have understood reading, is their idea is because desire is the problem. So their idea is to become free from desires. Okay. So when you finish the body, then there are no desires. That's their understanding.
But
in short,
who's left to experience anything? In Buddha, I mean, who's the experiencer of nirvana? There's no consciousness after death. So who's experiencing the nirvana?
Yeah, I don't know. We have to ask them. But what do you think? Maybe Drutakarma Prabhu can say something. He's asking who is experiencing this nirvana for the Buddhist followers.
I don't know.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Rabindranath Prabhu.
Yeah, Jayadvaita Swami was saying how when he was editing the Chaitanya Charitamrita about the philosophy of Sankaracharya, and he was thinking that maybe Prabhupada didn't explain it properly, or anyway, he told Prabhupada he didn't understand the philosophy that was presented in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about the Mayavadis, and Prabhupada said, yes, you can't understand it. In other words, it's so crazy you can't understand it.
Yeah, I was remembering this point, like the understanding of nirvana that's given in the Vedas is very different from the understanding of nirvana in Buddhism. Like their understanding of attaining nirvana is just become free from desire, become free from this body, because the body is the cause of the suffering. But as per the Vedas, we understand like there are different types of liberation. And so depending on what type of liberation, like even the demons, they attain liberation. And there is this verse in the Bhagavatam which says that what's the point of attaining liberation? Even the demons attain liberation. So engaging in bhakti is the real liberation. It's called vimukti. So there is mukti, liberation, and there is vimukti. And that's the highest form of liberation. Because like for, it says about Mother Yashoda that she is like so much more advanced than all these kinds of yogis. Because all these yogis, they are meditating for thousands of years. And they do not attain such opportunities to associate with Krishna in such a way. But look at Mother Yashoda, she's like an ordinary lady in one sense, looking externally. She's just like a village woman, and she's doing just basic daily activities of her daily life. But she's associating with the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so freely. But these yogis, they do not even, after like thousands, millions of years of meditation, they do not even get to see the reflection of his toenails. So there are different types of those yogis. After meditating for so many years, they will attain some kind of liberation also, but it's not what Mother Yashoda is experiencing. So there is difference between mukti and vimukti. And in Buddhism, there is not even an understanding of mukti that's attained in, that's described in the Vedas, because Buddha completely rejected the Vedas. Naikatma Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. I was always under the understanding that nirvana there's practically no difference between that and the Mayavadi impersonalism. Nirvana and impersonalism. That the Buddha's ultimate goal is voidism.
Yes.
Nothing. So there's a difference between nirvana and voidism and impersonalism and voidism. The Mayavadis, again, they want to become one. They want to get to a nirvanic state, which is the same thing as the Buddhists are preaching. But their ultimate goal is to get beyond that and go to the voidist, where it becomes nothing. That was always my understanding. So
Rabindranath Prabhu.
that's how we understand it to be different.
Yes, Rabindranath Prabhu wants to add something.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that the Buddhists, they merge into the causal ocean.
They merge into what?
Prabhupada mentioned in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that the Buddhists, they merge into the causal ocean.
In the causal ocean.
Causal ocean.
Okay. So, yeah. In essence, like comparing with the Vedic philosophy, like even for the impersonalist, it's better in the sense that they accept the Vedas. So they are studying the Vedas, and it actually makes them open to accepting Vedic ideas. But whereas Buddhists, they completely reject the Vedas, so there is very little scope for them progressing in the way. But it's good if they like following the teachings of ahimsa, because like these days how I was sharing, yesterday I met one old man, and he said he had been to India, and he was talking about Vietnam War. So he said after Vietnam War, he decided to become a vegetarian. He said he don't want to kill anyone, or for that sake, even an animal he don't want to kill. So he decided to become a vegetarian. And yesterday I met him, and he took a Krishna book. Now he's gonna read Krishna book, and it's different for him. So it's good in the sense if they are actually following the teaching of ahimsa, because at least it stops them from, killing all these innocent animals and getting all more karma for that. And some point they become a little open to like finding out. So because once you start living a good nature life, like you are at least eating vegetarian, not killing animals, then it makes you a little bit more sane, and then you become more open to receiving higher understanding. And that's how I saw this person. He was like so appreciating India and culture and food, and he was like, I was like, okay, why don't you take one of these books and you can read more. And then he took a Krishna book, and now he's gonna read about Krishna. So it puts them on the path. So this vegan, all these things in themselves, they are not really gonna be a big help. But if somewhere they make contact with bhakti, then they can get out of this entanglement. Otherwise, they can keep coming back and becoming a vegan or a vegetarian. How is it gonna help them? But if they make contact with bhakti, then they can get out of this cocoon. I think it's
I was gonna say the Buddhists, they're going for an impersonal relationship with the Brahman. So their mukhya is temporary, but they merge into the effulgence of the impersonal effulgence from the Brahman. They don't have a personal relationship, so they merge into the light, and it's described as having a long, sleepless long dreamless sleep, but they have to come back. And that's from the Bhagavatam somewhere, I can't remember where.
Okay,
Oh,
we
yeah.
have one hand from the ladies. Can you speak a little louder so everyone can hear?
Hello?
Yes.
I just wanted to share, I had a friend who was a Bhakta and became a Buddhist, and she said that yearning for God that probably all of y'all feel and I feel, and the reason I chant, it just kind of went away, and she just feels complete presence now with everything. That was her experience.
Thank you. So, Buddha is actually an avatar of Krishna. Many Buddhists don't know, but some Buddhists know about this, and it's there in there are so many references of that, especially in the Dashavatar Stotra of Jayadev Goswami. And so Buddha is actually avatar of Krishna, but Krishna comes at different times to give different teachings. And at that time people were misusing the Vedas, so that's why Buddha rejected the Vedas. And then after that Shankara came, who re-established the teachings of the Vedas, and Buddhism went out. And then Lord Chaitanya came, and then the Bhakti understanding was re-established. So I think we can stop here. Thank you very much. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.